Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we're going to get started on doing some more modifications to this little model steam engine. And if you watched the previous video, we're going to be exhibiting this at FabTech coming up in a few weeks. We're going to be over in the Osborne booth, Jim Bollinger and myself, and we've been working as a little collaborative project on trying to resurrect this little model steam engine. This is something that I had bought at a old tool meet many years ago, long before I started doing videos. Just kind of been sitting around, and we've been trying to do some maintenance to it. And right now, my project for the day is going to be, we're going to be making a new base for this thing. I really have never liked this base. It's just kind of thrown together. It's not made very well. And I think we're going to make a nice wooden base out of some mahogany and really make this thing kind of stand out and look a little bit more appealing than it does right now on this little kind of not so nice base. So let's go back into the wood shop, and we're going to start working on getting a base made. So the base that we need, I need for it to be about 24 inches long and about 12 inches wide. And like I said, I want to make it out of mahogany. I have this piece of mahogany right here. This is about 4 inches thick. It's about a little over 6.5 inches wide, and plenty of length on it. So really what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this off to about 24 inches. Then we're going to come in here and actually resaw this, cut it in half this way, the 4-inch direction, so that I'll have basically two pieces that are about 2 inches thick, and we can glue those together, and that'll give me something that's, it'll probably end up being just a little less than 13 inches if I don't trim it up. So let me take this over. We're going to take it to the cut-off saw. We'll cut it to length, then take it to the bandsaw and resaw it, and then start getting ready for gluing. Got a mark here, and we're going to just use the sliding compound miter saw here. It's not going to be able to cut it in one pass. This saw is not made to cut something quite this thick, but I think I can do it in a couple of passes and get it done. I'm now going to just flip it over, and we'll line ourselves up on that previous cut as best we can. It's not going to be just perfect, but I've got some extra length in here. It won't matter. There we go. Got the bandsaw now set up with my Resaw Fence, and this is just basically a fence. If you look, it kind of has dome shaped, and what that allows you to do is it gives you a fence to kind of keep your measurement. You mark this to the width that you want to cut, but with a bandsaw sometimes will track, and you'll have to make some minor adjustments. So with this little bit of a concave surface on here, it will let you adjust it as needed to track down that blade. So let's come on in here and see if we can get this cut. Taking a really wide cut, so you just kind of have to take your time. So the next step here is we need to get some faces that are flat and square to one another. Anytime you're dealing with rough cut lumber, the first thing before you run it through a planer to get it smooth, you need to get one side flat. If the board's got twist in it, you run it through a planer, it's still going to have twist in it. And the right job for that is the joiner. In my opinion, one of the most important tools in a woodworking shop. This one here is a 16-inch Crescent joiner. I really like it. It's with planer board or joiner board, 16-inch wide. And I use it both for face planing as well as joining square angles on here. So let's fire this puppy up, and we're going to start by getting the bottom flat. Once I get the bottom flat, we'll come over here and we'll run it up on its edge and get one edge square. It's got a little bit of rock in it right now, so it's pretty much right in the middle, so I'm just going to kind of should have taken, yeah, it took pretty much everything except this end down here off, so we need to take another pass, maybe two, to get it flat. And voila, no rock in there now. Next step, I'm going to put it up against the fence here, and I'm not setting it on the bottom, I'm putting it up here. I've already checked the fence to make sure it's square. And there we go, we got a flat bottom and a square side. We'll do the same thing to the other piece. These are going to be glued together and made into one piece, but I want to have one side of this that is parallel to this face here. We will actually rip the other side parallel to this outside side once it's been glued together. And you say, well, why not just run across the joiner? Well, I'm not going for square here as much as I'm going for parallel. I want this to be parallel. And if this board was wider on the bottom than at the top and you run across that joiner on both sides, it's still going to have a taper to it. So the right thing to do here is take it over to the table saw and run up against the fence, and that way we can make sure we have a uniform width. And I'm really not trying to cut any real width off here. I'm just trying to clean this edge up. So I got my blade where it's just barely touching. In fact, I'm going to move it on over just a touch, and hopefully that'll clean up. We may have to make another pass if this board does have some taper to it. There we go. We're ready to glue up. I've got some clamps here already laid out. I got my wood in here. I'm going to do it with this plain side or jointed side down, but I just got it up right now to make sure I got my book matching going in the right direction. And tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over like such. And what I like to do is I just roll these edges up. I'm going to apply glue to both of these edges, and then we will fold them back down, and everything should be aligned properly. So I like to put glue on both sides. I just feel like you get better contact that way. And I'm just going to take a brush now and just kind of smooth this out. You don't need to go crazy with the glue. You want just enough to wet the surface and maybe squeeze out just a tiny amount, but you're not like trying to squeeze out a whole lot here. This glue will make an extremely strong joint. It's amazing how strong a glue joint is. In fact, if you have a properly glued joint and you go and try to break it, the wood will actually break before the glue joint will break. The glue is usually stronger than the wood. So anyway, let's get a nice coating on here. All right, I think we're good. We'll go down with that one, go down with that one, right there on one another. These boards are just a little bit different thickness. We will take care of that later when we plane these to the final thickness on the thickness planer. But we want that other side to be pretty much flat all the way across. Let me grab my dead blow hammer. These clamps are just tight, not very tight. They're just holding it in place. But I want to make sure. We're flat across the bottom, and I'll go ahead and tighten these up. And the other thing is that you really don't have to go crazy with the torque on these clamps, but I am going to grab a few more to put in there. All right, guys, now we just let this sit and let that glue dry. We'll come back tomorrow and take it apart and work on some more. I will point out right here, I've folded this up, and you can see we've got just a little bit of squeeze out on our glue, just a little bitty tiny bead all the way down. That's perfect. That's exactly what you want. You don't want the glue just pouring out of that joint. That means we had plenty of glue in there. There was a little bit extra, but we weren't wasting any glue, and we weren't making a big mess to clean up. Well, guys, off camera, I went and ran this thing through the thickness planer. I don't have one here at my shop. Well, actually, I have a little small Delta lunchbox type, little small benchtop type planer, but it wasn't quite wide enough for this board. So I took it out to the museum and ran it through a little bit wider planer, and I didn't show that on camera. But one thing when you're working with mahogany is it's got this really beautiful figured grain, but this grain is running in different directions, and when you run knives on figured wood, sometimes you'll get a little bit of tear out, and that's kind of what we have here. It's not very deep, but it ends up with a rough surface. You got like a real smooth surface next to a real rough surface, and that's where the direction of the grain changed in the wood, and we need to get that out. Now, we could come in here with a belt sander or even just an orbital random sander and just take the time to sand it down, but I prefer to just use my good old-fashioned hand planes to take care of this. And I've got two hand planes that I'm going to be using on this. These are both what they call a low angle plane, and these low angle planes, a normal bench plane, the blade in here is running up at a higher angle. On these, it's at a real low angle, and that is very good for working with figured wood. You don't get as much tear out. And I've got two versions of this. This is a Stanley number 62, which is the longer one, and this is the 162, and this is the lie-nielsen version of this. So this one here is an old hand plane. This one's a new hand plane built by lie-nielsen up in Maine, who I had a chance to visit their factory and their showrooms a couple of weeks ago when I was in that area, by the way, which I greatly enjoyed. I've had this plane for quite some time, both of these actually. And they both get the job done. Quite honestly, I think these lie-nielsens are a little bit higher quality than the older Stanley ones. These were mass produced for the masses. These are really handmade more for fine woodworking, I guess, but either one will work, and we're going to use both today. Now, I'm going to start with this little smaller one, and it will just kind of help get these things smoothed out quicker. So when you're hand planing, typically you start with a smaller, a shorter plane to just kind of roughing, I guess you'd say, and then you go to the longer plane, and the longer plane, because it is longer, you're going to be averaging that surface over a longer area. You'll get a flatter surface. So we're going to come in here. Another little trick when you're dealing with figured wood, where you're getting tear out problems, is normally you just plane with the grain, but if you can do your work at a skew, kind of move that chisel point at a skewed angle, do it like this, or even just cut across the wood at an angle, you won't get as much tear out. So we're gonna, go ahead and try to just knock off these. All I'm trying to do is just get this smooth to get this tear out. It's already fairly flat, so we're just gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna get in here and I think I'm gonna just attack it from an angle to start with. I think I need just a little bit more blade there. There we go. All right, we got it knocked down pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to the longer, number 62. This one is going to, like I say, average over a longer area so you get a flatter surface. And we're gonna start hitting it at that angle again. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. We've smoothed that out pretty well. And, you know, I'm still gonna sand this, guys. I'm just trying to make that sanding job a little bit easier by hitting it with the plane first. And you see the process. I love my hand planes. They're great for woodworking. All right, let's get to the next step. When we were getting this board ready to glue up, remember we joined one edge, or actually we joined two edges here. We put those together, but we also cut one side parallel to the jointed edge. We didn't do anything to this outside edge over here because I wanted to wait until we got it all put together. So now that I've got a good edge over here, I want to get a parallel cut on this side. So we'll go ahead and just barely, I'm not trying to cut this to a dimension. I want this board to be pretty much as wide as I can get it, which is going to be about 13 inches. So we're just going to just barely fuzz it off and just take the minimum to clean it up. So now we have two parallel sides, and the next step here is I want to actually cut these ends off nice and square. Right now they're just rough on the ends, and I'm going to get my miter gauge for that. Next step here is we want to put a little decorative round over, what do you want to call it, around the perimeter, just to kind of give it some nice appeal to it. This is going to basically be just a plate that the steam engine's sitting on. So I've got my router table set up with the right router bit. I want to decide which side I want to be the top. I think I want this side to be the top. So it's actually going to go down while I'm routing because this is going to be, the top end is down. And with that, we'll turn our router on and go ahead and put this edge on there. All right, we got a good routing around this. I think what I'm going to do is get a sander or something and knock this rough edge off. And I'm just going to go around it one more time just to make sure it was flat. If this table picks up just a little bit, you don't go to the full depth, and we want to make sure that we got it the same depth all the way around. So let me do that real quick, and I'll make another quick round on there, and we should have that done. All right, we got everything cleaned up here, and now let's just start sanding. And I'm just using a random orbital sander, and we're going to go through the grits. I'll start with an 80 grit, probably go from there to a 120, 220, 330, 340, whatever on up, and get it nice and smooth and ready for finishing. I'm not going to bore you guys with a lot of sanding. We'll get started on this though. We've got this nice and sanded out. I went to 220 with the orbital sander, and then I hand finished it with like some 320 to finish it off. But we're ready to put a finish on this, and I'm in a little bit of a time crunch, so I don't like always doing things this way, but we're going to finish the whole thing at one time. I'm going to start with the bottom, and I'm going to set it over on a couple of points. It's probably going to leave a few little marks, but it is on the bottom, and again, I am in a little bit of a time crunch here. Now, I'm going to be finishing this with a product called Waterlox. It's a tung oil type of a finish, but it has some other material in there as well. And I'm just going to start by putting a little bit on here, and I'll just take a little acid brush here. Let's go ahead and put a nice little liberal amount on there. This is a penetrating type oil, so what I will do is I will put a nice coat over the whole thing and then let it sit for a few minutes, and then we will just wipe it off. I really like this Waterlox product. I got turned on to it sometime back when I took a class, and the instructor in that class really liked it. And anyway, it has been kind of my go-to finish ever since. Really, it's kind of a nice cross between an oil and a true finish, like a polyurethane type product. But it has that oil in there, which really kind of brings out this grain like you see here. So I'm just going to go ahead, we'll wipe that off. You can build this finish, so you can put multiple coats on. And I probably am not going to do that on the bottom, but we probably will do that on some of the other parts. All right, so I got my bottom done. I've just got a couple of small nuts, and I'm going to set this down on that so it kind of raises it up off the table, get some air up underneath there, and so on, and go from there. And we're going to let this penetrate for just a minute and just kind of keep it fresh up on the surface by brushing it, so that if you get areas that absorb a little bit more oils and some other places, it just kind of lets it fill in. It's turning out real nice. I like that. It's going to look good. All right, guys, what we're going to do now is just let this dry, and I will come out in probably every couple of hours or so, and we're just going to build up a little finish on here. I'm probably not going to show you all those steps, but I'll probably end up putting about 3 or 4 coats of this stuff on here and build it up. This first coat is going to kind of be a sealer coat. The rest of them, I mean, this is penetrating the wood right now, but the rest of them will more build up on top of this, and you'll get a really nice look in there. So I'll probably just bring you back at the end. Usually I will lightly hand sand this between coats with some really, really fine sandpaper as well, not to take the finish off, but just to take any roughness off of it. This oil doesn't really raise the grain that much, but you can get a little bit of fuzz or whatever that comes up on it. So anyway, that's where we're at. I will bring you back and show you the final product after we get a couple of coats on here. Well, here we go. I think we got this piece knocked out. Started out with just a rough board. We cut it in half. We did some joining on it. We did some planing on it. Hand planing, sanding, put the routed edge around here, and now we've got a nice little display board that we can mount our steam engine on. I will mention that off camera I made these little riser blocks, and these are made out of some black walnut, and this will be where the engine sits on to kind of raise it up a little bit to give clearance for that flywheel that's going to be on there. And this was just made again out of some black walnut, and I cut these out on the table saw and stained them and finished them just like the rest of this. I did that off camera. But this part's done, and I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this video up, and we'll probably shoot some video of us installing the steam engine on here. Well, there you go, guys. That's going to be a wrap on this episode. Appreciate you guys watching as always, and we're going to go ahead and get this thing moved over here. Headed to FabTech here very quickly. That's this coming week. This video will probably post on Monday, and the show starts on Tuesday. So I'm running out of time, so I got to get this thing knocked out real quick. But I am looking forward to hopefully seeing you some guys up at FabTech. Come by and take a look at the steam engine and hopefully see it running up there. And with that, we'll talk to you next time around. Thanks for watching as always. Leave me some comments, thumbs up, all that good stuff. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.